Welcome to the show. Today's guest is Nancy Bruns out of Charleston, West Virginia. Nancy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me,
Oh,
Francesco.
absolutely my pleasure. Franco, Francesco, doesn't matter. I've been called a lot worse, so don't worry
Okay.
about it. So, um, before we get started, can you maybe give a little background about you and the family business? And then we'll have an interesting conversation around board preparedness and all that sort of fun stuff.
Sure. So I will try and keep it as short and succinct as I can. We are a 210-year business in West Virginia, started in Virginia in the salt industry, and that evolved into other natural resources, timber, coal, gas. Then we got into commercial real estate and private investments and banking and other things. So we have multiple businesses under our enterprise. And I am currently chairman of the board of the family and as a seventh generation member. So that's the short story.
Okay. So how long have you been a board chair?
I've been the board chair for 3.5 years
Okay.
and a board member since 2014.
Okay. And we hear about preparedness in family business. I don't think we talk enough about preparedness to be on a board. So can you maybe explain your journey as how you got from family member, board member to now chairman of the board?
Um, let's see, I sort of pushed my way in a way. My father died in 2003, and all of our shares of family businesses are held in trusts. So all of that came to my brother and myself after his passing, and so I was not prepared, a prepared beneficiary and shareholder. Um, and so I really had to learn. So I took the bull by the horns and started learning about best practices of multi-generational family businesses and as well as what our family was doing well and maybe not doing so well and how we got to seven generations. And um, we, I then kind of spearheaded an effort to have an investment committee because of the 0809 financial crisis and how that affected our family's portfolio. And so I was head of our investment committee, and then I rolled into a full board member um, in about 2014. So it's then I took over as board chair after a 40-year run by our patriarch. Um, and it was time for him to step away and time for a new generation. And so I sort of finangled my way in there. And I think it's been so far so good, successful.
So Nancy, you talked about, taking the bull by the horns. That takes a lot of courage and initiative, right? Like what was the driver and you said, I need to do this, I must do this?
I don't know. Sometimes that's just sort of an innate sense, and it was with me that, especially as I was doing more and more research and going to conferences and learning about family business on a broader scale, I was so fascinated with how we had gotten to where we were and maybe not followed all the best practices, but I knew how important it was for the future, and I saw that we were being more passive and not as proactive in growing our businesses. And so I just started asking a lot of questions and working with the board and feeling like, okay, I need to be involved in this, at least continuing to ask these questions and to help guide where we go. And they were welcoming and sometimes and sometimes not. I felt like that I would go into the boardroom and sometimes they would swat me away, but I would keep coming back in their faces. And, I just felt it was really important. So I guess some people call that the family champion who takes that on, as Dennis Jaffe refers to it. Um, I don't consider myself a champion, but I do consider myself somebody who cares and who wants to see the best for the family, and I'm willing to spend the time and make sure things are done right, and to make sure there is that it's teamwork. It's not just my agenda.
I that's powerful. That's you should be commended for that, Nancy, because not everybody has the gumptions or the courage to do that. And our COO Thomas and I talk often about um, families seem to know what they need to do. They know they need a board, they know they need shareholders agreements, they need harmony, but very few of them look at the cause. Why haven't we gotten there? What do you think was your family's why?
Um, well, I would say that there wasn't a, I don't know, that's complicated because different people have different perspectives. And I had one board member who said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, Nancy. And I would say, well, to me, it is a little broken. Maybe it needs just a little tune up. He didn't want me to mess with things too much, and so I had to take smaller and smaller steps. Um, so I think that now looking back at it, and we are a much more proactive family in terms of uh, being being out there looking for opportunities and starting new business and just making more investment in the future. Um, those people who said it ain't broke are now seeing, you're doing a good job. This is the right path. So I'm not sure I answered your question, but that's kind of where we are.
No, I think you did. No, Nancy, I think you did. I think you hit the nail on the head. Because people are we're afraid of
Yes,
change.
most people are afraid of change. I actually love change. I think it's exciting. So I think
Me too.
that's one
That's why
reason
we're
that
here.
I maybe am the right person for this at the time. Because I think change is good, and I think change needs to happen. If you're not changing and evolving, you're sliding backwards.
Yes, if you're not growing,
Exactly.
you're dying by
And I
definition.
think with a seventh generation family
So
business, with the family growing exponentially, we have to be on that front foot even more because we have more and more pressure from shareholders for dividends and growth, and we can't keep up. So we have to keep it relevant enough that the cousins want to come together to manage these assets together. If it's not relevant enough, they're not going to care, right? And so then it's just going to really die.
so taking what you didn't, but what you had to learn on your own. So the non-preparedness, so self-preparedness, let's call it that. What have you learned from that to intentionally, strategically start to prepare the future generation of board members from a family
Well, we're
perspective?
we're really trying to create more opportunities for cousins to come together of the next generations. Um, because I'm seventh generation, but I'm almost 60, so we actually have, I don't know, 60 people in Gen 8, and we have 12 or 13 in Gen 9. So we want to make sure all those cousins know each other. Um, to me, it comes down, it's all about love and loving each other and wanting to come together. So we have to create opportunities for people to come together to get to know each other, to understand that we're all part of this business together and what everybody's roles are, even though they're not and may not be involved on a daily basis. That doesn't mean they're not an important part of the family. So we're actually getting ready to have a session next week that's focused specifically on that.
It's so listener, take note here. It's important to know each other first before you can
Right.
own or govern together. Right? It's a fundamental. It's an obvious thing, but let's really point it out, right? Because once I know you, then I get to choose if I
Right.
respect you or if I
Exactly.
trust you.
That's a good point.
Because then it's easier to make decisions together with this respect and trust. But if we haven't had time to know each other, we can't just jump into, well, I'm going to respect and trust you because you are
Exactly.
blah blah blah. So how do you, as a family, Do you have a process or how you go about selecting board members?
We so we have three branches of our family on what we call our side. We have another side of the Dickinson family, but I'll focus on our side. So we have three branches, three different families, and so we take one member from each family, so everybody feels represented. And then we are just getting ready to amend our family constitution to, we used to have two members from each family. And we think that that's restrictive because not every family has members that are ready to be on the board at the same time. We also feel that it's important for the board to have a say in who comes on and those other three spots. So it's a board of six, three family members, and then those three families nominate other members of their families who want to serve, and then the board decides who the other three spots are given to. So you may have two others from one family, and maybe one family isn't represented um, with two members. So we think that that's a better route to go to make sure that we have a balance of skill sets on the board, as well as, maybe different ages and personality types. You need to make sure that you have a board that can work well together, that you don't get too many strong, kind of bullheaded people versus some very, very quiet people. Um, and then we have two staff members, employees who have full board seats, and then we have a strategic advisor who doesn't have a board seat, but he is listened to like he has a board seat, so he's an objective outside voice, and he's been very valuable as well.
And so you touched on this. I just would like to go a little bit deeper. So, what kind of emotional criteria, preparedness criteria, uh, experience criteria do you look for new board members, if you have it at all? In writing, is it formal? Is it something
We
sort of in
don't
the
have
head?
anything written so much as one, we want interest. We want to make sure that people have business experience of some sort, uh, so they can bring that to the table. We want to make sure they're a good communicator, um, but I think their interest is the main thing, and that their commitment of time, and
Hmm.
then what their life experiences are and how that can add to the board. Our enterprise is pretty
Okay.
complicated, I would say, even though it's fairly passive, but it's complicated in a lot of different industries. So, I'm not so much concerned about teaching them about what the businesses are doing, because we can get over that hurdle. We have time to do that, but it's more about, are they a strategic thinker? Are they a good listener? Are they going to add something to board discussions?
Okay. Fabulous.
Okay.
So let's switch gears a little bit because not only do you chair the board,
Yes.
you have your own business that you started. So can you talk about that and how
Sure.
that went
So
about?
our family, as I said, started in the salt business in 1813, and I my first part of my career, I was in the food industry. I was a chef for 20 plus years, and was collecting salts in my pantry from around the world, and then really dug into our family history, and which even though I grew up here in Charleston, the salt industry was not going on when I grew up, so I didn't understand the impact that our family had in salt in the 1800s. So once I really understood that, and we owned the same property, I felt, oh my gosh, we need to be making salt again. So I reached out to my brother, and he was very interested. So we, in 2013, revived our family salt industry, and we are individual owners of that company. It's not part of the larger family enterprise, but it's JQ Dickinson Salt Works, so it's part of our, it's celebrating the family heritage in salt. And so we make salt from an underground ancient ocean, and we solar evaporate it and hand harvest it and sell it all over the world.
I got to get my hands on some because I, like you, I'm a salt collector too. Okay. And I got to tell you, one of my favorites, two of my favorites are number one,
Oh
the
yeah,
salt from Margaret
yep.
River in Western Australia, pinkish looking. And
Okay,
then the other
yes, I
one
know
is the
both of
Persian
those.
blue.
Well, we need to add our salt to your list.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I do. I do. I do. I do. So, well, let's talk about where do I get it? How do I
jqdsalt.com.
get it? There we go. There we go. Okay. So let's talk. So Brene Brown talks about, individualization. So the sense of independence and at the same time belonging. Because one of our basic human needs is to belong, be part of. We are tribal. And yet at the same time, we want to be individuals
Yes.
within the tribe. And I think family business members have a difficult time separating the two. How did you do it?
It's not something that you really give a lot of thought to until you're looking at it in retrospect, right? Um, I was 37 when my father died, so I had to go out there and work on my own. And, I owned a restaurant for 10 years and made my own way in the world. Um, but then, after he died, I started to become more involved in the family and showed up at family meetings. And, um, there was a rule at one point where you had to be 35 before you could go to a family meeting. And I've changed that. So I think the earlier people can be involved, the better. Um, but then you realize what you're a part of, and it's very empowering in a way. It's like you have this extra support system, right? You have a lot of people that you can rely on for advice and support and input on what you're doing, as well as you can be involved in it, but maybe you're not going to be involved in it. So like when I started the salt business, I came to the family office and talked about it, and actually some of the members thought I was a little bit crazy, like, you're going to start salt? But they once they learned more about my vision, they really understood it, and it was a very good support system. So they weren't the only ones that thought I was crazy to get into salt. But I think it's important for family members to understand that they always have that sort of safety net with the family office, even if they're not involved on a daily basis, because it can be helpful.
Hmm. Yeah, and at the end of the day, there's relationships, there's resources, there's a lot of
Right.
leg upping that they can really
Whether they're
benefit from.
looking for a job, or, they just need to understand their finances
Hmm.
better, or they have questions about, we want to be very transparent. We want people to come in and ask us questions. And so, I think for some family members, I think it's a little bit intimidating at first because of its long legacy, and they don't feel like they're
Hmm.
worthy of it, or, they're not involved, they're not board members. But we do want it to be
What can I bring to the table, right?
right.
There's all the
So
human
it's,
insecurity that shows up, right?
and I think we could do that better. I think we can be more open, and that's what our conversation is going to be about next week, is what is everybody's role. Even though our family office is here in Charleston, West Virginia, and you live in California, it doesn't mean we don't care about what you're doing. If you need us for something, we're here.
So, one of the big issues in family businesses, and it's more of a parental issue,
Hmm.
is around preparedness. How do I, as a parent who happen to be the chairman of the board or the founder of, right, another role other than parent, how do I prepare the children who be anywhere from 18 to 40, sometimes 60, I've seen, to one day handle the wealth, whether it's a collection of businesses or an operating asset or real estate? And I think the challenge is with preparedness is they can't clearly define or articulate what it means. What are your thoughts on what preparedness means for you and your family? Let's just focus on from getting
Right.
into
Well, I
being
think that
involved.
there are, first of all, that's a complicated question. Right. Um, but I think that you have to take it in bite-sized steps, right? And you have to start them young. So my children saw me when my father died, immerse myself in the family business. And um, there were conversations around the dinner table about what I was learning and what I was doing. And we were living in North Carolina at the time, and I was traveling to West Virginia. Why are you going there again? Why are you going there again? Um, so I think having open conversations with children about what's going on in the family, you don't have to talk about the big numbers that may be associated with it, but just what's going on in business. And I continue to have those conversations with my children who are now 28 and 25, and I've got one who's very interested in the family business and who joins our family meetings, usually by Zoom, but sometimes in person. Um, but I think you also have to kind of pull them away and spend some time with this up and coming generation and talk about the details and what happened 7 generations ago to get us to this point. They first need to understand the family history. And then, okay, what businesses are we involved in? And okay, where are we going? And we're currently transforming mine land into green energy complexes. So that is actually very interesting to this new generation, right? Because they're much more environmentally aware. And so we're making decisions for future generations that is based in clean energy. So that gets their attention. Um, so we're thinking about that because we do think generationally, right? We're not, I mean, we think 3 to 5 years down the road, but we more than likely we're always thinking about what are these decisions doing for the next generation in 25 or 50 years. And so you have to portray that to the younger generations too. It's like, we're looking out for you and we need you to understand that. And then you're going to be a decision maker down the road and you're going to come to a family meeting and you're going to cast a vote. And that vote is important.
It goes back to how we started the conversation, which is
Hmm.
about inclusion, right? Letting them be a
Yes.
part of inclusion and involvement, right? I think too many parents, let's start with the parental role first before we throw in the business owner or chairman role, um, think that their kids are too young and too naive and too incompetent. And the reality is, you know nowadays I think
Yeah.
my children are certainly smarter than I was when I was their age. Like, there's no doubt about it. There's a level of awareness, there's a level of emotional global connectedness because of the internet. So they've got a
Right.
lot to contribute if we allow
Absolutely. And
them
I
to.
think you learn about them and their decision making skills when you have those conversations. It's like, okay, what gets their attention? Are they bored with these discussions? Are they not? It was actually kind of surprising to me. My son, when he was, I don't know, 21 and still in college, he all of a sudden brought up to me about he had an investment account with Robinhood. I'm like, you do? Where'd you get the money to do that? He said, "Oh, I don't spend all the money you give me for my allowance, so I started buying stocks." Like, wow. Um, yeah.
That's
I'm not sure he
impressive.
was making good stock choices, but that's okay. But he was learning through that, and I was just like, because, I would talk to him about the stock market. I gave my kids each a certain amount of money with my financial advisor, and I turned them over. I said, I'm going to stay out of this. You all work with our advisor and you make some decisions and learn about portfolio management. And then that's when he decided to have his own account. So, I think he was listening. That to me, it pointed out to me that he was picking up on things that I wasn't sure he was. So I was glad to hear that.
That's it reminds me of, I don't think as parents we realize how they actually listen to us and they pay
Right.
attention to not just what we say,
Sometimes
but
too
what we
much.
do.
Right. Like, you weren't supposed to hear that.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. Yes, you weren't supposed to see that either. So, Nancy, it's been a real pleasure. What a treat to connect and speak with you. And time has flown by. Like I can't believe it. So, and I always like to end the show asking our guests one question, and it's for both
Okay.
generations. Current and next gen or up and coming gen. Based on your experience, what's one piece of advice you could offer
Oh
the
gosh.
listeners?
Um, Open communication, I think, is the most important thing between the family office and the family assembly, so so to speak. I think that communicate, 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 right? Just keep everybody in the loop, whether they want to be or not. And I think it pays off.
So there you go. So, folks, as I've always said at the end of the show, our guests volunteer the time very graciously. We volunteer our time. The production team volunteers our time because this show is really for you, the listener. Because I realized early on in my practice and my career that being part of a family business sometimes can be a lonely place, particularly as a next gen, and you don't feel like you've got people to talk to about the issues, like the emotional issues, the family dynamic stuff, all that humanness that we bring to the table as imagine human beings. And that's why I wanted to create a show so you don't feel alone. So we invite folks that are successful, that are parts of family businesses, to share their learning and their wisdom and their experience. So if there's something that Nancy and I spoke to you really just resonated, drop us a note. Say, hey, that was great. Didn't like that. Sort of made me think about this. But most importantly, share. Be generous. Share with your network the show.